I do wonder how much of Pal World's success is due to the knowledge of how strict Nintendo is over their properties, and it's a bit of a you to Nintendo almost.
Let's talk about the flavor of the week, the flavor of the month, the flavor of 2024 so far. Let's talk about Pal World. There's been a lot of controversy around this game. Is it AI art? Is it a Pokemon reskin? What is it? Now, as we talked about this pretty much every day, everyone's favorite activist group, PETA, has got in on the fray. And PETA has issued a statement addressing animal cruelty in Pal World. So here we are. By the way, these are animals, just fictional, fake animals in a video game. But they have said, PETA has already heard from many Pal World fans who have no interest in eating pals and want a vegan guide created for the game.
I tried to cook my chickens.
In this game is vegan, okay? Because no animals are dying for it. Like, let's get that straight. No one's coding in the characters in the game and the fact that you can kill and eat them and then slaughtering a goat as a sacrifice. That's not happening.
I have a question for everybody. And like, there are even vegetarians, even vegans, right? Who likes PETA? Aren't they just kind of like fucking annoying? Like, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Does anybody in our like? This is something that I would love to hear. If you side with PETA, don't you still think you're fucking annoying? Right? Like, aren't you like, well, we are pretty annoying, you know?
People don't even really know what PETA does, and I will tell you, TLDR, basically, they euthanize animals.
Yes.
They actually euthanize animals. They don't rescue animals. Fun fact for you.
And where's your background on this? I don't know.
I've done lots of research on PETA because of agricultural background. However, you can go to the website once upon a time, and it would actually tell you straight up that they would go and euthanize animals. But PETA stands for People Eating Tasty Animals. And also, I was one of those people who tried to cook their dead chickens on Pal World the other day. So I'm one of those people PETA hates, and I'm proud of it.
You're a horrible person, Blab.
Yes.
I mean, it's less brutal than if you tried to cook one of the live chickens.
It's a great
yeah,
point.
well, I would never do that. That's just horrible animal cruelty. I know how to get rid of them.
John,
it seems every time they... Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, my man.
Oh, every time they complain about something, it's like a punchline. It's like, oh, who pissed off PETA this time? You know, they always, like, whenever they come out of the woodwork, it's just like, oh, God. PETA's pissed off.
And it goes back to their statement where, like, PETA has already heard from the statement of many Pal World fans, right? No, they haven't. They haven't heard from any Pal World fans. Nobody's writing PETA. Yeah, nobody's writing PETA and is like, listen, guys, I'd really like a vegan guide for Pal World. Can you make that happen? Like, really put the pressure on them. Like, that's like when you see a news reporter at a, questioning an athlete or something, right? And they go, well, some people say that you need to work on your three-point shot or something. Oh, really? Who? Who specifically? Who has said that? Well, some people. Like what a cheap cop-out. I hate that shit.
Own the criticism.
It drives me crazy.
Like, I don't know. I don't mind if they complain or about or expose like needless abuse at these like factories and stuff.
Yeah, factory farming.
Yeah, exactly. But like this,
right?
Like, fuck off, dude.
Bill Mayer has something to say about this.
Fuck off, you oversensitive little shits.
Yeah.
There you go.
Do you kill the animals in Pal World?
Yeah, you smack them around. You can shoot arrows at them. Yeah, you can kill them.
Or you can...
well, where were they with Zelda, where you can fire an arrow at a wolf and it poofs into a fucking steak? I guess that's no problem. Or
Or Minecraft.
Pokemon, just regular Pokemon, where you capture Pokemon and make them fight each other. Like, is that not an issue for PETA? I guess killing them is the big thing. Like, I don't know.
I think PETA is just thinking like, hey, there's a trending topic that involves animals of some kind being enslaved. Find a way to use this.
Yeah. Right.
I think it's just there's a huge echo again. I hear that. Oh, it's gone. Anyway, I think it's just because Pal World is making all the news right now, and PETA wants to make themselves relevant somehow, and that's what they're doing.
Hey, there's also some news going on with with Pal World, where a lot of people are saying it's just Pokemon with guns. But that was the thing. It's Pokemon with guns, right?
Yeah, it's impossible to not see the first Pal World trailer and come out with that assessment of it.
Well, it's been very successful in marketing for sure. But thanks to Mudahar over on Twitter, apparently the Pokemon Company is very aware of what's happening without actually saying Pal World. They released a statement that says, "We have received many inquiries regarding another company's game release in January of 2024. They're like, wink, wink, nod, nudge, nudge. "We have not granted any permission for the use of Pokemon intellectual property or assets in that game. We intend to investigate and will take appropriate measures to address any acts that infringe on intellectual property rights related to Pokemon. We will continue to cherish and nurture each and every Pokemon and its world and work to bring the world together through Pokemon in the future." It's from the Pokemon Company. Listen, I haven't played.
They're talking about actual animals. They're like, we're gonna nourish these Pokemon, and when they grow up, you're gonna get to play them in our new
grow and prosper
acid reflip game that all Pokemon fans are gonna immediately complain about, because I'm not a Pokemon player, but I notice almost every time a Pokemon game has come out in the last 5 years, that's what happens.
There's a John. Have you played Pal World at all?
No, but I've watched a lot of gameplay of it. I find it interesting. I would like to try it. Yeah, I probably will.
So, Blabs, you spent time with it.
Yeah, I played like 4 hours or so.
Okay, and your thoughts on this? Is there, obviously it draws inspiration from Pokemon, but to say that it infringes on its IP, I don't know. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like it's a gray area, but also how do you prove, right? Because Pokemon, we did this the other day. Pokemon has similarities to, what was it, Digimon or something else like that? We were talking about another thing the other day. It's all got similarities to it. So I don't know. I mean, there are similarities, the little Pokemon ball and everything. It's just, it's very detailed, but how do you prove without just being similar?
Here are some examples you're mentioning. This is Dragon's Quest and Pokemon, and there's a lot of similarities between those the little creatures in Dragon's Quest and Pokemon, right?
Yeah, that was it.
And once again, it goes back to, for me, find me a product that wasn't inspired by another product, and I'm going to call you a liar, because that's impossible. Everything's inspired by everything these days. So I think Nintendo, as was mentioned earlier in the chat, Nintendo's going to find a very quick lesson in fair use, I think, perhaps, unless there are some emails that say like, hey, let's take this character and copy Pikachu or something along those lines. It's an interesting thing. I don't know, John, your thoughts?
Like you guys have said already, I mean, everything's derivative of something else. It made me think of when Tetris came out, and then after that we got like Columns. Dr. Mario, fucking Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Never mind all the modern stuff now, like Candy Crush and Bejeweled. It's all the same shit. Blocks fall down. You line up the colors in clear lines. And with this, I don't think they're gonna get into trouble. I think if they get into trouble for anything, it might be for some of the Pokemon designs themselves. I don't think they have any hold on like the basic framework of like capturing creatures and having like a team of creatures that you pit against other teams. Like, I don't think Nintendo has like a hold on like a serious legal hold on that. I think other people can do whatever they want. But there are parts of Pal World that I've seen where it's just like you are really trying to be Pokemon. Like I saw some footage of like the interface. And it was like, I saw the box system. It was like box 1, 2, 3 for like holding the Pokemon in storage. Like that's straight out of Pokemon. It was like that since the DMG Game Boy game. Like,
well, what's
sorry,
interesting? I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. What's interesting here is, as pointed out in the chat, this is these two Japanese companies that are kind of squaring off against each other. Apparently, there's no fair use in Japan. But when you look at this, what's the worst thing that could happen in a situation like this? All this controversy is spurring sales. It's spurring interest in Pal World. So let's
I
just
mean,
say
the game could get
The
shut
worst?
down.
I was gonna say the worst is that Nintendo sues them for everything they have and demands that they are owed every single dollar that they made off Pal World. But
Yeah.
I don't think it would ever come to a ruling like that, because of what John was saying. That is, like, Nintendo doesn't have ownership over the idea of capturing a monster in game and then using it for something else in game. And I'm not a big Pal World guy. I've not played it. I've watched a lot of my wife play it, but I've seen enough of the gameplay to understand what it is. And it's much closer to being something like Valheim or Conan Exiles or Ark Survival Evolved. It's more about getting resources and then building stuff and creating an army with like the little animals. They're just one of the resources that you gather. Than it is about training and going to a gym. It's not turn-based combat. It doesn't play like a Japanese role-playing game at all, which is what most of the Pokemon games play like. It's just a survival game where instead of having slaves like you do in Conan, you have like little animals. And I think that when it comes to the concept of the game, like because the way you worded it initially was, do you think they're stealing Nintendo's IP? And I think that it's tricky, because if we're talking about individual designs, there's some arguments which could certainly be made. At the same time, are the Cylons in Battlestar Galactica really that distinctly different from the Stormtroopers in Star Wars?
Right.
It's like, oh, well, they both work for like a big evil empire and they're in armor. So it's like, it's basically the same. And the fighter jets look kind of like X-Wings, because that was an actual lawsuit in the 70s, Star Wars versus Battlestar Galactica. And, at a certain point, it's like, well, you don't own all of the concept of spaceships, and like an evil empire, that's like, it's a concept that a lot of people can get to differently. And what are we doing that is inherently Star Wars in Battlestar Galactica that you can need to sue us for? And I think that it would be very difficult to make an argument that Pal World is doing anything that Pokemon is doing specifically, which makes it impossible to tell that it's a distinct product. Now, a lot of people will then make the argument about brand name association or like brand dilution, where if people look at Pal World and say, oh, that's the new Pokemon game, and then a new Pokemon game gets announced, they're like, oh, they just announced one. I just bought the new one. I love this one. I'm not even worried about the new Pokemon. I think that's highly unlikely, though, because I don't think anyone's under the impression that Pal World is an official Nintendo product. So I think the best they'll be able to do is, this looks too much. Your wolf looks too much like our wolf.
Which may happen. And let's say they have to change some characters. At the end of the day, people are still getting to know these characters, whether they have a different look or not. Like they may change the look of a certain character, but people will still know its attributes and powers, even if they have to make those changes. I don't know. Controversy creates cash. That's the old saying, right? And I don't see this as a necessarily bad thing, unless the game just totally gets shut down. Which, in the case that, let's just say Nintendo goes hard and they shut down Pal World, how bad would Nintendo look by doing that? Be horrible.
I do wonder how much of Pal World's success is due to the knowledge of how strict Nintendo is over their properties, and it's a bit of a fuck you to Nintendo almost. Like, I'm not saying it's not a good game. I'm just saying that I feel like that might have something to do with the sheer amount of sales. Because, like, also like an FU to Game Freak, which I think as a developer are stuck like 20 years in the past in terms of their game design. Like their approach to game design was more acceptable when, it was back on the Game Boy, where the hardware was so limited. And to even make a game happen of that scope, Nintendo had to do some pretty innovative things when it came to data compression, like for the Game Boy games especially.
So I went on the Pocket Pair website, and here's
What's Pocket Pair?
This is the company that does this game,
Gotcha.
Pal World. That is the developer of the game. And here's their CEO. You notice he worked with DS development at Nintendo, right? So he's familiar with the video game industry space, the video game industry. My thought is, why don't Nintendo do what Microsoft has done, or Sony's done, or let's say Activision's done? They go out and they acquire Pocket Pair, buy it, and then they have Pocket Pair develop Pokemon games for them in the same vein as Pal World. Seems like a pretty big win-win. Now, it would have been considerably cheaper a week ago, but just something to consider. If they
Yeah.
I think that sounds like a pretty good idea.
I have one question for you guys. Don't you think that if Nintendo had an actual legal cause to sue Palworld, they would have done it when the first trailer was dropped as like a cease and desist? Like, this is your RIP you're like smooching off of. Don't
Probably.
you think they could have done that? So I don't really think they have a case for suing.